Welcome to Chicago IANDS. Um, we were having an interesting conversation about World War II. So gotta change channels here. We're going to take just a moment to do a brief meditation, as we usually do. Um, so if you're with things on your lap, you might want to get yourself comfortable so that you can relax and go into that space that you go into when you go. You might gently let your eyes close. Welcome back. It's hard to come back. Just briefly, a couple of short announcements. One is that our speaker next month is Sandra. Oh, okay. My phone is reverberating. Okay. Is that better? Okay, sorry about that. Sandra Champlain will be our speaker next month. Sandra is a very interesting person who, as a young woman, had an intense fear of death. I mean, she was just totally afraid of it. And she spent a lot of time researching it and learning about it. We're getting at some other reverb that's not my phone. Does somebody else have a phone?
Diane, um,
What?
you're the only one that, because it's, you and Evan are the only ones that have that are not muted. So it'll be one of the two of you.
Okay, that's better. Um, okay. Um, at any rate, she had an intense fear of death, spent a great deal of time researching it and learning about it. She ended up to go forward doing podcasts, and she does the We Don't Die radio. She's interviewed many interesting people and had many interesting experiences. And she will be our speaker next month. So we can look forward to that. I hope you'll all join us for that. Other brief uh, uh, announcement is that, if you can, please donate. Since we've been having our meetings online, we don't meet our monthly expenses. We don't take in enough, and then we don't charge for our meetings because I believe this information is so important. Do you have any idea what that is, Vicky?
I mean, do you by any chance have another two computers or a phone on at the same channel, at the same Zoom?
I don't. You
Do
don't. Evan,
Evan?
do you?
No, ma'am.
Okay.
I'm not sure what it is. It's because everyone else is muted.
Yeah, very strange. I don't know.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think,
Evan's going to be speaking in a moment, Debbie. So uh, we don't want to turn him off. At any rate, if you can donate, we would appreciate it. I feel this information is so important. It needs to be available to everybody, no matter what. So we don't charge for our meetings, but um, we request a $20 donation when it's possible, and whatever whatever you contribute, you can deduct from your taxes. That is the weirdest thing. I can't imagine what's going on.
Does everyone hear that noise?
Yes.
Yes,
Yes, we do.
everybody hears it. I can't understand what it could be. Well, keep trying to figure it out, and it's okay at the moment, so we'll go forward. Uh, at any rate, uh, we're really privileged to have Evan Mecham with us today. Evan has been a very successful businessman. If you read his bio, you know that he's done amazing things, and since his near-death experience, has become a wonderful helper to the world, a terrific volunteer, and a supportive member of our world population, and we're very grateful to have him with us today. Um, he's going to do questions at the end, so if you have questions, put them on the chat, and we will get to them at the towards the end of the meeting. So now I'm going to turn it over to Evan and let him tell you all about his story and how he got where he is. And thank you for joining us, Evan, and glad to have you here. It's all yours.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that very much. It's an honor to be here, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to share my story. I was taken back by the bio. I don't know who would have time to read all of that. It was awfully long, and I hate to say it, but some of them is so long ago that I can't even remember it. But I don't know how you found all that stuff, Diane.
Well, it took a while to get it together, I'm sorry to say, but I think it's all interesting. And I cut a lot out. So
A lot out. Oh my goodness, you saved all these people.
I think it's interesting. I mean, um, I think most people enjoy finding out something about the person they're going to hear about. And when they've done such nice things, it's especially nice to hear about them.
You're very kind, Diane. Thank you. Thank you very much. This is a really amazing opportunity to meet with Chicago IANDS, and it's a real privilege. I have heard about Chicago IANDS for many, many years, and Diane and I met over the phone and then over Zoom many times over the last few months. It's been a real pleasure to meet you, Diane. I met Heidi as well. I don't see her on here, but she was a lovely individual as well. And thank you so much for inviting me.
For sure. My pleasure.
My my beginning with all of this near-death things, I can tell you that as a young man, I had no clue what a near-death experience was. I had no idea of anything except how I was raised, which was in a Christian home. I was raised in Southern California. Later, I lived some years in New Zealand, but I was a member of very normal and regular Christian church, and my family went to church every Sunday. I was raised with the understandings of Christianity and the Bible, and I knew that we lived on this planet, and I knew that someday I was going to die, but I really had no idea about all of the things that I have experienced since that time. It was a really interesting change in my perspective. I was a young man. I was married. I had 3 children at the time, and I had just moved to a mountain state, and I was living on one side of a mountain and driving to a temporary home on the other side of the mountain. And I was a very dedicated business person, was took a new job with a company that was a manufacturing company, and I was immersed in turning this company around and making it do much better financially and increase its market. And I was working diligently to do that. I stayed really late one night, almost 10 o'clock, and I knew I still had to drive over the mountain. This was at the end of winter, so the mountains were still snow covered, and it was very, very cold. And the drive was uncomfortable as it was, even in good weather. And we had just had a snowstorm, and while it didn't deposit a lot of snow, it was cold, and it was maybe 10 inches of new snow on the ground. The highways had been plowed, but at 10 o'clock at night, they were beginning to freeze. All of the water from the snow that had melted during the day was rolling across the highways, and there were patches of black ice. I was driving my car quite fast over a 2-lane mountain road, and that was beginning to freeze. And I had only the idea that I needed to get home, get some rest so that I could jump up again and do the drive in the morning and be back at work. So that was my state of mind as I sped down the highway. as I crossed over a little rise in the road and came down and my headlights hit the road again, there was a great big mule deer, a Rocky Mountain mule deer. They're very large. A male deer can be 250 pounds. And one was standing right in the middle of my lane on the highway, and I was going way too fast. And all I could think of was that that deer, if I hit it, was going to come right through the windshield. And I didn't want that to happen. So I dipped my wheels to the left very quickly. And then I missed the deer, moved the wheel back again, and my car did not come back into my lane. It just kept speeding straight ahead into the other lane of traffic. And as I looked forward, I saw a semi-truck coming right at me. And I had time enough to think only, oh my, a head-on collision. That's exactly what happened. My car sped into that truck. It managed, the very front of the vehicle managed to miss the truck, but the truck hit right behind the driver's front tire and cut my car in half. One half of the car was just disappeared. I saw the pictures afterwards and everything was gone. I found myself waking up and I was laying on the floor of the automobile. I had no idea what happened to me. I'd been unconscious. I didn't know for how long. I couldn't understand what was going on. At that time, I didn't have a great deal of pain, but I knew things didn't work. I reached up with both arms and one arm did not respond at all. My left arm would not move. I suddenly realized that I wasn't breathing well either. It was very difficult to take in a full breath. I could get about a half a breath, and then it was like something was constraining my chest and I couldn't get enough air. I started to search the rest of my body and discovered that no matter how hard I tried, I could not reach my right arm up onto the seat of the car and try to pull myself up. It just didn't work. My legs didn't work. I couldn't move my legs. I was absolutely stunned. My head laid back on the rubber mats in the car, and I remember feeling the ridges of those mats in the back of my head, and I was struggling to try to understand what had happened to me. Time went on, and as I said, I was in the mountains, and it was very, very cold, and one half of my car was gone. I started to shiver and get very cold. The pain began to come. I could feel something wrong with my left side, and I could feel something right in the middle of my back that felt it felt awful. It was like a pressure pushing against my spinal column. And I thought, oh my goodness, I can't move my legs. Maybe I'm a paraplegic. The thoughts, I did not focus on those thoughts. Instead, I found myself trying to find out what I had left. It's funny how one's mind works when you're in a crisis like this. Time kept passing by, and finally someone came to the side of the vehicle, and it was a woman, and she said, "Are you all right?" I said, "I don't know. I can't move." And she said, "Someone has called the authorities, and they are located at a small city at the bottom of the mountain, and it's 35 miles up to where we are. So we don't know exactly when they're going to arrive. So just hang in there." And that's the last voice I remember hearing. As I laid there, I was shivering so hard, and the pain began to come in all the areas that were damaged. My left side was in agony. Again, I couldn't breathe very well. Unbeknownst to me, I had ruptured my spleen and I was bleeding internally. And that was the major problem that I would have, was that I was bleeding profusely and I had no idea that was happening. I recognized that I couldn't breathe right, and the pain in my back and side and my right hip was excruciating. I thought many thoughts. Finally, after quite some time, I began to realize that I was dying. And it was a fascinating opportunity for me that I have looked back on now many times, that I had the time to go through the death process. So many times in near-death experiences, people are on the operating table, or death comes very quickly from a stroke or from a heart attack. And I was laying on the floor of a car. I felt everything, and I felt the cold. I felt my life slipping away. And as my life began to slip, and I came to the recognition that I was not going to make it, I had the most amazing experience. I began to see my life, and I saw it almost all at once. I could see myself as a small child. I saw myself growing up. I saw the interactions I had with people. I felt the emotions. I felt the emotions that I created in others when I behaved poorly. I saw all the interactions. I saw the emotional entwining of falling in love. I saw again and felt the amazing aspect of having a child and seeing it birthed and coming into the world. I flowed through all of the experiences that I had, and I realized many years later that everything that I saw was about my interactions with other people. In the end, I had an amazing feeling of gratitude that flowed over and through me. I realized that I had lived a good life and that I had fallen in love. I had children. I had experiences. I saw the good and bad in my emotional pathway through the world. And I realized how many things I learned from my experiences. And I was grateful. That feeling of gratitude became overwhelming. And as I felt that, and it flowed into my heart, I began to lose the feeling in my body. And it was as if death was coming to me as a warm blanket being drawn up from my feet, over my body, past my heart, and over my head. And I lost consciousness and slipped into that departure from this dimension into another. I had no idea that there was anything else. I had my teachings from Sunday school, but they were inadequate and they were childlike. Yet I felt gratitude. And I said to myself, as I closed my eyes and felt them roll back in my head, that if this was all there was, I was grateful to have been alive. I found myself in a totally different place. I was laying on my face, and as I laid there, I couldn't comprehend where I was, what had happened. I did realize immediately that I was no longer cold, and I felt no pain. I put my arms to the ground and I pushed myself up slowly, and I could see that the ground was misty. I couldn't see any hard surface. I pushed up higher and came to my feet. I looked at myself, looked down, I looked at my hands. I could see through them. It was not in my physical body. I looked up and I was absolutely amazed. I was in a nighttime setting, only I was seeing the stars like I had never seen them before. There were more stars than you could count in 1,000 years, some large, some small. There was color in the blackness of the night. I could see the spiral of the Milky Way galaxy as it spun through the universe. It was absolutely magnificent, and there was nothing but an open horizon. So I saw the mistiness of where I was standing, and I saw this massive, massive universe all projected before me. It was absolutely immense, and I felt incredibly small. As I brought my eyes down, I saw a group of light beings, of souls, of spirits, and they were a distance from me. And they seemed to stand, and they were linear. And they were calling to me, and I didn't hear a voice. I didn't hear a sound, but inside my mind, I saw them and had the vision of what they were saying to me, not in words, but I knew exactly what they were saying, and they were calling to me. As soon as I met them with my face and eyes, I began to move towards them, not walking, but literally floating towards them. When I reached them, their little circle opened up, and they circled around me and they embraced me. I felt absolutely and completely loved like I have never been loved before in my life. There was no hesitation. There was no judgment. They were not rating me or sorting me or sending me someplace. They were all around me and they were embracing me. And they held me in that embrace with such intensity that I was in bliss. I had never felt so accepted in my life. As this continued, I began to realize that I was warm, I was safe, I was being loved, I was being welcomed back as if I had done something important, as if I were a hero. I didn't think I had done anything to be worthy of that. I realized that everything that I had ever felt on earth that stressed me, that made me worry, that made me fearful, that made me feel that I was inadequate, that made me feel like I wasn't enough, that made me worry about how I would feed myself and my family. Everything that motivated me to be a better businessman, to make more money, to do anything that was material was gone from me. I was absolved. I was free for the first time since I walked in the material world. I was free. I was blown away by this feeling. It was wondrous. As I have thought about this, I have wondered so many times why I was given a choice to come back and why I did what I did. But as I was in this embrace, the thought formed in my mind that I can stay. This is my home. It is love. It is ultimate kindness. And you are welcome to stay. If you so choose, you may return to Earth and finish your journey there. The very first thought that formed in my mind when that was spoken to me inside my mind was I thought of my 3 children, and they were still very small and very tiny. And I thought of them, and my heart went out to them, and I thought how wonderful it would be to see them grow up in the world and see them experience what I had. With all this love and with the opportunity to come to a material world, there must be a reason for this life that is terribly important for us to leave the oneness, for us to leave the embrace of love and come here. This life must be incredibly important. And I thought again of my children. And as I did that, my choice was made, and I was shot back into my body. I was back in the winter air, in the cold. I was back trying to squeeze into that tiny body and feeling again the agony and pain of all of the injuries that I had sustained. And I was screaming. I could hear myself screaming. The first responders had arrived, and they were using the jaws of life to rip open what was left of the roof of my car so they could reach down and pull me out. It was the only way they could get me out. And they were shoving a backboard under me and strapping me to it, and every movement was agony and pain. And I was shivering so hard. They finally lifted me out. Strong male hands reached me, and I could feel the intensity and feel the strength of those men. And they carried me to the ambulance, and I began my journey down the mountain. I was wondering what miracle I had just experienced. But the miracles would continue that night. I remember very little of the long ride down the mountain, but I do remember being placed on a gurney and crashing through the doors into the emergency room at this little hospital that was based at the bottom of the mountain. This little hospital was close to I-15, a major interstate. And it was close to two other highways, one of which I had been on. And being a mountain town, many accidents took place. And this hospital, sorry, I hope you can't hear that. This hospital had wondered, since they were treating so many accident victims, why don't they open up a trauma center? And that would be a whole new aspect of their hospital. So they had gone out all across the country and had found the very best doctors that wanted to move to a smaller town. And they had brought them all there. And it happened to be the night that they had their very first meeting, and all of the trauma doctors were on hand. They were dressed in their suits, but they were all in hand. And every one of them ran to the emergency room, and I was soon surrounded by doctors, and every one of them using their expertise to try to save my life. One doctor was cutting a hole in the left chest cavity and trying to push in a tube so that they could reinflate my lung. Another doctor jabbed me in the stomach with a great big hypodermic, and as he drew out the hypodermic, it was full of blood, and he said, "Spleen." They were working like this amazing team, all to save this life who they had no clue who I was. As they finished their preparations and were about to wheel me off into the operating room, I asked the doctor who was working on my chest, was there someone there that could pray for me? This doctor said, "I'll pray for you." He didn't know me. I was just another patient. But he prayed for me. And when he prayed for me, the operating room became completely silent. Silent. And his words came out, a blessing to me that I may continue my life on this planet. And he said, "Amen." It was like a slap. And the cacophony of that trauma room started again, and everyone who knew their job so well immediately began working and rushed me into the operating room. I was very grateful for that. It took a long time for me to heal. The doctors told my wife the next day that they didn't expect me to make it through the night and that they had given me only a 3% chance of living. My thoracic cage, my rib cage on the left side, was so broken it had over 300 breaks in my ribs. my lung was not only collapsed, but it was perforated and would only inflate 1/3 of its normal size. The collision was so traumatic that my heart had been moved out of place. My shoulder was broken. The truck was black. I know that because I still have the flakes of paint in my left arm. My spleen was completely destroyed and had to be removed. I was given 8 units of blood that night and 8 units of blood the next day. When I was hit from the left, my right leg, my knee, hit the dashboard of the car and drove my femur through my hip. And they told me that they didn't think that I would be able to walk again. Miracles continued to happen. And I not only made it to the next day, I've made it till my hair has turned white. I have 5 children now and 19 grandchildren. And I live my life in gratitude. I came back into a world that had not yet defined what a near-death experience was. I came back into a world that didn't want to hear my story. And yet my life was changed. And it would never be the same. My poor family lived through all of my changes. My lovely wife stayed with me through all the ups and downs as I lost all my friends and found new ones, as I left my Christian faith and studied Buddhism and Hinduism and Middle Eastern religions and Spiritism and every other thing that I could possibly search and research to expand my understanding of what had happened to me. As an old man now, I look back and I can say that my experience has expanded with every bit of research and understanding that I have received, both spiritually and through studying and trying to understand what this life is all about and why it's so important that we leave that marvelous place that I visited and that I remembered. I came back with an understanding that love is the greatest power in the universe. That everything that is created, our universe, the many dimensions that exist, a creation that is so large that no human mind can grasp it, a numinous so ineffable that you can't describe it. And yet you feel it with every breath you take in love, with every breath out where you touch others with that love. You feel the Creator that made this magnificent existence in all its beauty, in all its wonder. I remain grateful for my life. I remain grateful for the idea of oneness. When I was that little soul standing there and looking at a part of that creation in that nighttime air, in that nighttime space, all of the wondrous stars and all of the wondrous planets that exist and all the life that is filling up that space. And I was just one little soul. I realized I was like a molecule of God, a molecule of that creation. And that every molecule of that creation is important and is known and is loved by the numinous. Those spirits that surrounded me and loved me reminded me of that, and reminded me that even as one little molecule, I am important to this creation, and that I have the ability to share that love and my knowledge and understanding with everyone. I don't have to teach it like religion. All I have to do is live my life that way. And that is what touches other hearts. There are as many ways to find where I was, to find that place in the heart of God, as there are people. And we live our lives without judgment. We live our lives without judging ourselves, without judging other people. And when we do that, I taste again the freedom that I tasted when I stepped across and into that other dimension. My mind is now free to work on what my soul mission is and what my path is. I don't have to be bothered. I can let everyone else walk their path. And I can love them for who they are. I can give them a response of love without expectation. And I can follow the path that my soul has divined and designed for me in this world. The oneness is so important. Seeing ourselves as a part of the creation is so important. We had the opportunity of sharing this planet with a gentleman by the name of Thich Hat Nam. He was a Buddhist monk, and he wrote many books. He passed away just this year, and he left a legacy of love, of kindness, of compassion, and non-judgment. Of a poem that he wrote in a book called Peace is Every Step. He wrote this poem many years ago, back in the 1980s, when in Southeast Asia, literally millions of people were leaving their homes, their countries. They were leaving their homes because they feared for their lives. They were craving freedom. They were craving a new place where they could live their life and raise their families. And this exodus was a part of what we called the boat people. And Han was a big part of trying to help those people find safety. They left their country in every way they could possibly do it. And since they lived right on the ocean, most of them found boats, tiny boats, larger boats, anything that would float. They even made rafts. And they launched themselves into the ocean and allowed the South China Sea to carry them to other countries, such as other Indonesian countries, the Philippines, even China and Thailand and other places where there was still a government that offered them freedom and safety. Millions went on these boats, and the journey was so precipitous and dangerous that only half ever made landfall again. They were besieged by the storms, by lack of water, lack of preparation, lack of food. People starved and their bodies were cast over the sides of these boats. River pirates began to leave their fishing villages and to take to their boats and use them to attack and to take advantage of these people who were unarmed and so stressed on these little boats. And the river pirates would take everything that they could, any valuables. They would take their belongings. They would take their food. They would take their water. And many of the river pirates would take advantage of the women who were on board these ships. And Han talks about a young girl, 12 years old, who was raped by one of these pirates. And when the pirates left, this girl was so traumatized that early the next morning, she threw herself into the sea and drowned herself. Han looks at this whole situation and he talks about this in his poem. Listen carefully. Do not say that I'll depart tomorrow, because even today I still arrive. Look deeply. I arrive in every second, to be a bud on a spring branch, to be a tiny bird with wings still fragile, learning to sing in my new nest, to be a caterpillar in the heart of a flower, to be a jewel hiding itself in some stone. I still arrive in order to laugh and to cry, in order to fear and to hope. The rhythm of my heart is the birth and death of all that are alive. I am the mayfly, metamorphosing on the surface of the river. And I am the bird which, when spring comes and arrives in time, I eat the mayfly. I am the frog swimming happily in the clear pond, and I am also the grass snake who, approaching in silence, feeds itself on the frog. I am the child in Uganda, all skin and bones, my legs as thin as bamboo sticks. And I am the arms merchant selling deadly weapons to Uganda. I am the 12-year-old girl, refugee on a small boat who throws herself in the ocean after being raped by a sea pirate. And I am the pirate my heart not yet capable of seeing and loving. I am a member of the Politburo with plenty of power in my hands, and I am the man who has to pay his debt of blood to my people dying slowly in a forced labor camp. My joy is like spring, so warm it makes flowers bloom to all walks of life. My pain is like a river of tears, so full it fills 4 oceans. Please call me by my true names, so I can hear all my cries and laughs at once. So I can see that my joy and pain are one. Please call me by my true names, so I can wake up, and so the door of my heart can be left open, the door of compassion. Hans saw himself as everyone, one molecule seeing the other molecules as part of the same creation. When we do that, we change ourselves. We see the world as perfect and doesn't need to be changed, that it was made for us to come and to learn how wonderful the creation is, to learn how to share ourselves with others because they're all molecules of the same creation. I love Hans' last statement. Our world does not lack people willing to throw themselves into action. What we need are people who are capable of loving, of not taking sides, so that they can embrace the whole of reality. We have to continue to practice mindfulness and reconciliation until we can see a child's body of skin and bones in Uganda or Ethiopia, or more recently, Somalia, as our own, until the hunger and pain in the bodies of all species are our own. Then we will have realized non-discrimination, real love, the love I felt on the other side. No judgment, no criticism, no sorting, no place to go because I was naughty. We see ourselves as one. He says, then we can look at all things with eyes of compassion. And we can do the real work to help alleviate the suffering of the world. Thank you, Diane, for allowing me to tell my story. God bless you all.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Evan. That was beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you.
Wow. I'm sure a lot of you have questions. Now is a good time to write them in the chat box. Everybody is speechless.
No questions?
No questions? Well, I think you forgot to mention 6 great grandchildren.
And 6 great grandchildren, indeed. I cannot forget them.
That's so wonderful. All those grandchildren. Oh my goodness. What a wonderful family.
Thank you. Thank you.
How does your family react to your experience?
It was a real struggle in the very beginning, going back to um, all the changes that I made in life. Um, I've been told many times that it's a miracle, another one, that my wife stayed with me through all the changes that I went through. Most near-death experiencers go through at least one divorce. So I think that is a natural happening because you change so dramatically. You see everything differently. And I was driven to change my life, to look at how other people see spirituality and to appreciate that. One of the first things I did was I went to and joined a Buddhist group that is here in Colorado. They run a university called Naropa, and they also have a wonderful gathering place high in the mountains with a stupa. And I attended many courses and went through their training program on how to be a warrior in life. Uh, um, has absolutely nothing to do with war. It has absolutely everything to do with maybe the war that one has within themselves as they expand and as they grow. And I had wonderful experiences there. But this was such a change for my children and my wife. For many years, I was a vegetarian. And that was, again, how do you explain just this abrupt change? I went on and joined the study of Hinduism, of and found Hinduism to be very much like Buddhism in many ways, but it expands it and adds history to it and ancient writings that are just amazing. And I love that today. And I continue to share in all the religions that I studied. I still go to my Hindu meetings. I still meditate as I learned how to meditate in Buddhism. And I still appreciate the aspects and the teachings, the true spiritual teachings that are at the heart of every major religion and ideology. So I'm following Han's admonition to be non-judgmental and to see and find the goodness and the spirit and the heart of everything, which I have found to be the very same. No matter where you are, no matter what you are thinking or what you're believing at the time, the heart of everything is love. Other questions?
Yeah, Heather is a therapist who had an NDE. And she asked, how have you included your experience into your work?
Oh, into my material work? Is that what you're asking? Yes? Okay, very good. Um, I love that question because uh, it it and almost immediately found its way into how I did. When I was a younger man, I went through all of the material philosophies of business, and I had the eye of the tiger, if you will. And after my experience, um, I saw I could no longer conduct my life like that. I looked for ways that everyone could win. I tried to treat everyone with respect and understanding. I tried to not judge. I turned handshakes into hugs. I remember the days when it wasn't something that you did every day to hug another male, and hearty handshake and maybe a bump of the shoulders was all that you could do. And I took that to hugs, and my customers and my business associates became my friends. They became my peers, not my enemies and not people to do battle with, but people to find a way to live on this planet, on this very material planet, and do it in a way where we did not need to hurt each other in order to survive. Hope that answers your question.
Does that answer your question, Heather?
I mean, it does and it doesn't. I mean, I'm just, you know, I'm
Ask
I'm a psychotherapist. Um, I'm in analytic training, and I'm thinking of getting Jungian training as well. But it's like, you know, the integrating the spiritual dimension of human experience with very real kind of life harms, and just finding a way to like feel like I can continue to do my work, but also honor this experience that I had several years ago in a way that is legitimate and not, as one of my clients say, is woo woo. And so I'm just struggling with all of that. But this, I appreciate
How
it.
long ago was it that you had your experience?
It was in 2000.
2000. Are you here in Chicago?
Now I'm in Indianapolis.
In Indianapolis. Okay.
It
Wonderful.
actually made me turn my life around. So
Wonderful. Yeah, it takes quite a while to incorporate all of what you tend to learn after an experience.
It takes a lifetime. As I said, it takes until your hair turned white. And let me go back. So this is when I was a little child, all right? And I remember walking into the chapel on Sundays or anytime there was a meeting there, and on the back wall of the chapel was Matthew 5:48, and it was framed. And Matthew 5:48 in the King James Version of the Bible says, "Be ye therefore perfect, even as your Father in heaven is perfect." Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. As you try to do that, you can become hateful of yourself. You certainly can be hateful of other people. You certainly can be totally stumped at trying to deal with the pains and the sufferings and the people who are angry and upset or criminal or bad. You can become absolutely crazy. When I really started to dive into things and you start looking at Christianity and reading the Aramaic Bible and reading other Bibles and looking at other translations, you realize that it probably wasn't be therefore perfect as your Father in heaven was perfect, but it was probably, be holy like the numinous is, right? Be holy, be spiritual. I remember telling this story to my first Buddhist teachers. And I still, at that time, thought I had to be perfect. And I asked them what they thought, and they said, well, we don't think about it like you do. No one is perfect. You are on a created material world, a different dimension from over and across the other way. And 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 we have joy here, but we also suffer here. We have pain here, And we have to learn how to deal with that. And probably, even if it was be perfect as God is perfect, you're not going to be able to do that in one lifetime. Which again was something I always wondered. I looked at when I was a child, I looked at my church leaders and I went, they're not perfect.
Yeah.
How am I? And they're old men. How am I supposed to be perfect? I don't think God intended us to be perfect. I think the creation is perfect. And I think we're here to learn new things and to learn an expansive way to see things. And if we're really on a path, remember who we are and where we came from.
I think being perfect is part of being perfect is being imperfect.
Indeed, isn't it? Yes, indeed. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
We have another question. How did you know what your mission in life was after your NDE?
I was driven to serve.
Right?
I
That's what it
found
is.
that. I was driven to serve. And um, that was a dynamic aspect of, of what I began searching for when I had come back. I had no idea in the beginning what that was all about, but um, that became very important for me when I saw distress, when I saw suffering, when I saw others that needed a helping hand. I looked and searched for ways where I could serve. Um,
When one lives in love, one seeks to serve.
yes, yes, yes. So that was very important to me, and over the years, I've worked in many places. I spent many years working with a local food bank here, and that's located in Broomfield. It's named Broomfield Fish, and I was a worker there um, as I went back to school, and I became a transpersonal psychologist. Then I became a counselor there, and I met with people and tried to help them to understand how to make their way better in this material world. And it was a lovely form of service. And I was able to touch the suffering that people go through. I was able to do my very best to help them to see a different way of moving forward with their lives. And it's not easy. It is. Human beings are imperfect, and the counselors are imperfect.
Yes.
So it
That's
is
okay.
a work in process. It is a work in process. And, and it is a process of learning how to have compassion and empathy for others, regardless of how they got to where they are and what brought on their pain. So, yeah, it's a process. Hope that answered that question.
Absolutely. Julie wants to know how you choose to worship.
My I find it very simple to worship in everywhere way or every place that I am. If I'm up at the Buddhist retreat, it's very easy for me to point myself into a way where I can reach the love through whatever means I'm sitting with. It isn't about a religion. I read this morning, I read this morning, um, Teilhard de Chardin. I don't know how many people know Teilhard. But Teilhard was a gentleman who passed away many years ago, but lived in the 20th century, and he was a Jesuit priest. He was also a PhD in geology, and he was a masterful writer of his heart. And I read Teilhard de Chardin this morning, and I read about Jesus. And I have no problem loving the idea of Jesus or loving Jesus or loving the Christ. I have no problem at all. I read this morning about Chardin talking about his teacher and an STE, we call it today, a vision that he had when he was observing a picture of Jesus. And if you ever want to read pages of something about the oneness, something about the ineffable universe that we live in, and very little about the person of Jesus, read this transformative dialogue that Chardin talks about. He talks about this gentleman looking at the picture of Jesus. And as he did, he saw a transformation of Jesus and the clothing Jesus was wearing, and he saw it morph into the idea of oneness and of the absolute eternal aspects of the creation. He saw the molecules that made up Jesus's clothing. He saw Jesus's face morph into the light of the universe. Is that Jesus? Is that a religion? Or is that understanding the incredible God that created this universe and all its dimensions? And the love that binds us all together. So it doesn't matter what church you go to. If you look for the love, if you open your heart and let the light pour out from your heart, doesn't matter. Because it's about the love.
Is it not the same God in every religion?
There's only one creator that I know. And I call it many names because it is my mother and it is my father. And the creator of all things.
Yes.
That's a question.
Yes. Debbie wants to know, and David, how have you fared physically since your experience?
I have great joy in my life and I have suffering in my life. Isn't that the world that we live in? That is the place where we dwell. And every time I feel the pain, I remember where I was, where there was no pain, and where there was only joy, and where there was only embrace of love. So, yes, I have things that are wrong with me. I don't walk so good, and I need oxygen at nighttime to breathe. And I still feel the pain in my chest, but I am grateful for my life, and I say thank you every day.
Wonderful. Wonderful, wonderful. Craig asks, what parts of your Christian faith do you feel support your NDE?
The love of Christ, the love of Jesus, the love of Christ. I don't know how many here know Krishna Das? I don't see any hands go up. Krishna Das is a young American man who in the early 70s, late 60s, left and went to India to follow his guru, Ram Das, to meet Ram Das's guru, Karoli Baba. And he wasn't the only one. Neem Karoli Baba gathered a whole lot of young American boys and girls who went over to India to find their way in a very troubled time. And I'm talking about this because Neem Karoli Baba talked about Jesus all the time. He talked about the Christ. And I remember that Ram Dass tells this story. He said, we were all gathered outside in the courtyard, and we were all sitting around the guru, and we were asking questions. And finally, one of the young American boys said, Master, teach us how to meditate. And so Neem Karoli Baba thought about it for a minute. And he started to say something, and then he stopped. And Krishna Das says that for the first time that he'd ever been around Baba, Baba sat up straight, straightened his spine and sat up, and went into his crossed leg and got himself adjusted. And he closed his eyes and he went into meditation. Krishna Das says that you could feel the love flow from his master into everyone that was in that circle. And that the love went out and into the universe. And he said, birds that were flying across the courtyard at that time stopped in midair, and time stopped completely. Then the guru released his meditation, and the world came back alive. And he said, when you meditate, you have to meditate like Jesus meditated. He lost himself in love for the creation, for everyone, for everything. He lost himself in love. That's how I see Jesus today. That's how I hold Christ in my heart today. Hope that answered your question.
Julie asked, what is the purpose of our incarnation?
It's different for everyone. Everyone has a soul mission.
There's no one way to do anything.
One way to do anything. I'll never forget, years ago, I was sitting with my Hindu guru, and I'm associated with a group that is up in Loveland, Colorado, and he was teaching a course, and he asked the class a question. He said, how many ways are there to nirvana, to the ultimate source? And everybody tried to answer the question. And I remember flashing into my mind an answer, and I raised my hand and I said, as many as there are people.
Souls.
Exactly right. As many as there are people. It is easy to die. I know. It's easy to die. It's hard to live. And we're all here at different levels. This planet is purposeful in its manufacture. We've been here thousands of times. We've been here once. We've been here 100 times. Whatever it is, we come back because our soul has a mission. And if we are opening ourselves up, if we are trying to live a decent life, and if we certainly awaken to the aspect of following the synchronicities, there are signs and messages everywhere. When we open to those things, we start to find our life's mission. We are guided to those things. When I was driven to serve, I was driven by synchronicities. I
Yes.
was guided. I followed the messages. You have to learn when to say yes and when to say no.
Different lessons with both experiences.
Indeed, indeed. So,
And every incarnation provides a different setting for different opportunities for evolving our knowledge and our growth and coming closer to the Christ energy, which is, I think, our goal.
yeah, I love that. Thank you, Diane. It's beautiful. Beautiful.
Meg says, thank you, Evan. A comment. Your description of each of us being a molecule part of the whole especially touched me because that is how I defined my near-death experience. Thank you, Meg. Claire says, it could be that you had other lives with your wife, so she understands you. No doubt.
No doubt, no doubt, no doubt. I had obviously, I've studied and read a lot about different ideas, but I've always felt for a long time, I don't want to say always, for some time, I've felt that, you know, we are we incarnate with our friends, we incarnate with
With
souls.
our group, our soul group.
Exactly. And I had the fascinating dream the other night where I saw a vision, and I saw a whole lineup of spirits or souls, and they were all ready to step across, right? And come down to this material world that we're living in right now. And we are all best of friends. We are soul friends. We have these incredible relationships with each other. And as we push through into this dimension, we lose all of that. And I saw the spirits tumble as they came through. And we can become friends. We can become terrible enemies. We become people who are all separated and not aligned. And we've forgotten yet an instant ago, we were with our best friends. If we can live our lives so that we get glimpses of where we came from, it makes Han's call for our compassionate look at the world and our fellows much easier to comprehend.
Peter said, I'm a therapist who has also struggled to incorporate the spiritual dimension into practice.
Yeah.
Have you had an experience, Peter? I don't see you. Where'd you go? Are you with us here, Peter, somewhere?
So we don't waste time or,
Yeah.
I think it's, being a therapist, we all go through, um, times where we start to lose our compassion. We start to see so much suffering that we become wearied. And that's a time when we really need to reconnect and we really need to ask for assistance from our guides, from our angels, from the numinous, and we need to ask for presence. We Presence is incredibly important. We get there through prayer. We get there through contemplation. We get there through meditation. But we need to ask for the presence to come. Sometimes we need contemplative prayer, contemplative meditation, where we talk about those things that are our stress, that are our fears, that are our pain. And that pain may be coming from other people, but we maybe need the opportunity to talk through those things. So don't leave out the opportunity. We all probably meditate, but you can have contemplation within your meditation, or you can have and perform contemplative prayer and talk through things. Other times, we need to listen for the answers that come. Back in the 40s and the 50s, there was a gentleman by the name of Joel Goldsmith. No clue who Joel Goldsmith was, but he called to me at a book um, at a book show, New Age book show here in Denver. Um, I had the most amazing experience. I was walking down the aisle and I was being approached by authors who want to talk to you and want you to buy their books. And I heard my name called out rather loudly. I looked around. I couldn't see that anybody that was talking was calling my name. And so I continued to listen to this individual that was telling me about her book. And then my name was called out again. And this time I looked over and I saw a stack of books. And on the top of the stack of books was one that was open and standing up. And it was a picture of an older man with white hair and very dark rimmed glasses. And I looked at him and he called my name again. Needless to say, I made my way over there very quickly. I looked at the book, wrote it down, and I came home and I ordered it immediately. And I began my journey with Joel Goldsmith. Joel Goldsmith had a healing practice. And the healing practice was so successful that it spread all around the globe in the 1950s. He became best friends with the Dalai Lama and with many other religious leaders around the world. Joel, at the end of his life, had healed over 40,000 individuals. And that is only the ones that are documented. Well, I began to read Joel's books, and Joel taught me how to pray. He taught me about contemplation. And he told me that the most important thing about meditation and prayer is listening. And so I use Joel's little mantra, if you will. And it goes something like this. After I'm ready and I'm calm, I say, "Here I am, Lord, waiting for your words of grace. My inner ears are open." And then I sit and I listen. And I have never been disappointed, ever. And as you practice this and you pose a question, the answers begin to come just like this. And you know in your heart the answers are true because they're about you. And often they're not what you want to hear, but they are what you need to hear. So practice. Try Joel's way. If you're in need of help and you've talked to God, then try Joel's way of listening to God and open up. There is no one who knows you better, who knows what you need more correctly than the Creator of all things. Give the Creator an opportunity to help you walk through this world of sorrow and joy.
Absolutely. Wonderful. Vivian says, what are the ways you found to be a heart warrior in this world? Keeping an open heart, living, working, and surviving.
Well, I think I've talked about that already.
Yes, you have.
Um,
Elle says, did you tell the doctors of your NDE while you were in the hospital?
no, I did not. I didn't even know what I had had. Right. I certainly couldn't say NDE. And very frankly, the first part of my recovery was I was in so much pain that I was
I'm thinking about that.
not exactly engaged in thinking about that. As I recovered and as I struggled to feel good enough to live again, I was often asking myself why I came back. So I was not immune to feeling um, the pain of this life and becoming very well informed with the kind of agonies that many of our sisters and brothers live with every day of their life. And as a wise person once said, it is your wounds, that give you empathy. There's a great story. There's a great story. Do you mind if I read one more thing?
Please do.
This is a lovely story, and many of you know about Bethesda, the pool, the spring that is outside the gates of Jerusalem. And it is a spring that is connected to deep underground sources. And it has a slight sulfur smell to it. And it's a calm pool. But every once in a while, bubbles erupt up through the surface. And it has been the belief for thousands of years, way before the Christians came, And before the Jews built the city, it was used by other people who lived in the area. And they believed that if you went into the water when the bubbles were erupting, the angels would heal your maladies, whatever was wrong with you, whatever disease you had. So during the life of Christ, it was very important. And lots of people went there and laid around the sides of the pool. And when the pool bubbled, they would all roll into the pool so that their malady could be healed. This story is a story about a physician from many years ago, long before Jesus, when the Greeks were there, and Asclepius was the proprietor of the pool at Bethesda. And he tells this story. And he said a physician came, and the physician, he was seeking a healing for a physical malady. And this is a quote: fearful flaw in my heart. That fearful flaw in my heart. The physician saw the bubbles in the water and was entering to receive his healing when an angel stopped him and said, "Without your wound, where would your power be? It is your very remorse that makes your low voice tremble into the hearts of men. The very angels themselves cannot persuade the wretched and the blundering children on earth, as can one human being broken on the wheels of living. In love's service, only the wounded can serve." Said, "Do not enter. Go away." The power of healing comes through the wound. If the physician is healed, he will lose his power to heal others. Wow. Think about that with every human being. Think about that as a counselor. If you can train those who are suffering to reframe that suffering, to see it as part of their life's journey, all of a sudden they become the counselor. They become the light to others. Reframing the suffering becomes the light. Amazing, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
It fits in well with our next question. I'm also curious regarding your doctor. Did you ever speak to them regarding how they experience such miraculous survival? How they integrate as they participate in the process with patients?
My daughter,
Your doctors.
your doctors.
Did you ever talk to your doctors about how they experience such miraculous survival and how they integrate as they participate in this process with their patients?
I have not with the doctors that were originally were working on me. No, I have not. I didn't do that. It took me many, many years to get to a point where I could talk about this openly and not pick and choose who I could talk to. Today, I have the opportunity of being around doctors all the time. I work with them at IANDS. When I speak at at other IANDS groups across the country or other places, I have the opportunity to address those issues. But no, it was a great distance of time, in earthly time anyway, um, since I worked with those original doctors. Yes.
Meg says, if you had chosen to stay, Evan, does that mean that you would not have completed your purpose if you had chosen to stay on the other side?
I feel that that's correct. Yes. I feel that the creation um, is incredibly large, and um, that there are uh, probably infinite dimensions. And so I think that every aspect of our life, I heard one of my clients said just the other day, I was at a crossroads, and I know that I chose this way, but that um, when I chose that, I realized that either way would have been correct. My point is this, that I think everything that is supposed to work out works out, whether it's in this dimension or another dimension or another dimension in time. When you cross over, time does not exist. Um, when you cross back into the material world, time does exist. So it's very different, even though
But actually, we have eternity to accomplish our goals.
every,
So,
everything that's supposed to happen will happen. Yes.
exactly.
Yeah.
If you, I was fortunate. Just to add a little something here. My father, when he died, he was 90 years old. He was sitting at his kitchen table and he was paying his bills, and he just bent over and died. And after he died, he came to me. He said he was given a choice whether to stay or to go. He was told that if he stayed, he would have a long, lingering death of cancer. And if he went, he could just go then. Um, and he chose to just go then. Uh, Often you hear when people come back, they say that they chose to come back, but you don't get an opportunity to often talk to people who chose to stay on the other side. And he did that, but he said wouldn't matter because he can come back and choose the same lesson if he didn't finish his lesson, and have another opportunity to make that happen on another occasion. And as I said, the time is infinite. We have eternity. So
Absolutely.
I think that's revelatory. um, uh, Julie asked if you had many STEs before or after your NDE.
All the time.
Yes.
Um, if you like, you could, I certainly think that every time I receive a message, every time I have a vision, every time I have a life-changing dream, I'm having a spiritual, transformative event in my life. So yes, many times I've had that, and many times they have been profound. Absolutely, yes. Um, I'll tell a quick story. This happened in 2017, I believe. And I was home alone. My wife was visiting um, my son in New York, and I was alone. I'd been doing some work, spiritual work, and I came upstairs, and I went to bed. And as I laid on my bed, I was in a very comfortable state. My mind was not racing. I was very comfortable. And I had been seeing in my regular vision a spinning orb that even if I was in broad daylight, I would see this orb in my third eye. I did not know what that was, and I had been diagnosed with macular degeneration, and I wondered if it was something to do with my disease, right? And and I couldn't really get my arms around what was happening to me. And when I closed my eyes, um, I saw this incredibly spinning blue orb right in my third eye, and it had lightning shooting through it. And it was very beautiful. And it would go from a dark purple to a beautiful violet, and then to blue and back again. It was lovely, but it was a bit concerning to me. I laid down in my bed, and as I laid my head back on the pillow, out of my third eye came a spinning orb, and it was dimensional. It was ethereal. You could see through it, but it was all of the colors that I was seeing normally in my third eye when I closed my eyes. Only it was about 18 inches across, or the, the diameter was about 18 inches. And it was spinning outside of my body. And I was absolutely dumbfounded. I had no idea. Um, After about 5 or 6 minutes, it went back in. So the next day I was on the computer, and I think I was on the computer that night with one of my professors. Um, my professors for transpersonal psychology were academics, but they all had spiritual experiences, and they taught transpersonal psychology, which means that you understand that lots of things happen outside yourself and that everyone has a soul. So they were very amenable. I immediately typed a letter to one of my professors who had taught dream work to me, and I told her what happened, and I asked for an answer. And secondly, I emailed um, my Hindu guru in Loveland, Colorado. And the next day, I got answers from both, and both were said very close. But my guru said, "Oh, yes, you have a great blessing from God, and it's called the Blue Pearl, and Guru Muktananda has written a book about it. You have to read the book right away." So, spiritual transforming experiences, if you continue to walk your path, happen all the time. And if you fall off your path, the synchronicities will pop up everywhere to help you find your way back onto the path. You're never alone. Your angels, Luminous is always with you. They won't let you stray. You just have to open your inner ears, and you have to be aware of the synchronicities and say yes to them.
Yes, absolutely. Beautiful, beautiful. Wow. Thank you so much, Evan.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you. Thank you for inviting me. I'm very blessed. Thank you.
You're very blessed. Thank you. See you all next month. Have a great month. If you celebrate Christmas, have a wonderful holiday. whatever else you celebrate. Have a wonderful holiday. We're all one.
Amen.
It's all about joy. Remember to listen and trust. Listen and trust. Very important. Beautiful.
Bye, everyone. Love you
But
all.
thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Thanks a lot. Bye.